Assalamu alaikum and good morning, honorable speakers and worthy participants. I welcome you all at Institute of Regional Studies to discuss and learn from each other on this significant topic of struggle for freedom in Kashmir, a critical appraisal. We had a certain set of questions as well, which required to be pondered upon a brief appraisal of the struggle by Kashmiris, possible reasons for apathy by the international community to the plight of the Kashmiris, how Indian media is projecting narrative on Kashmir, is the Indian narrative on Kashmir becoming acceptable internationally? How do people of Kashmir feel about the militant struggle? What are the challenges faced by them? And in the end, way forward for Pakistan. With this brief introduction to this roundtable discussion, I would like my first speaker, Dr. Shabana Fayyaz, to shed light on this subject. Thank you. Over to you, ma'am.
Assalamu alaikum, everybody. It's always a pleasure to be a part of the IRS exchanges and dialogues. Of course, we are headed by Honorable Ambassador Yasir. I have spoken on this subject at least twice, I think, in this forum and at NDU as well. But of course, I cannot be, and I must say, I am not equivalent to the Dr. Mujahid Gillani, who has seen in reality and continues to be, work with the indigenous parts. But at the same time, we are the ones who have grown up and with this feeling that the Kashmiri problem should and will be solved one day. So the positivism has to be injected. I have 10 minutes to go. I don't want you to bore, but since I have made a bit of effort, so I'm just going to go it. And it's open to question, and presentation will be with you people. You can, use it or whatever. A struggle for freedom in Kashmir, it is something a very contested subject. And I always tell all the researchers as well, what we see, the other side may not see. And why they not see, we must understand why they not see and what we should make and do to make them see a bit different from their perspective that exists on Kashmir. Because after all, we need to find the way, Pakistan, and so does the Kashmiris and the India. We cannot keep on blame gaming everything. But that blame gaming has to be an indigenous effort based on the solution-based discussion. So that is my point I would like to raise here. So basically, Kashmiris, what I feel, Mujahid Saab, I've met only a couple of times, but have followed his family efforts, and Mir Wise and other friends in Indian part of Kashmir as well, or disputed whatever you say, and in the Kashmiri diaspora, living in UK, outside from Azad Kashmir and from the Srinagar as well. So they also, or what is the generic what we can use here is, the point is that it is not a freedom struggle, is not a state to state struggle. This is what the India portrays. And this is what something, as Sumera spoke of the narrative, a narrative that has been sold to the world. And whether we like it or not, that narrative has swept the minds of a lot of people. And even I feel the young generation that we come across. It's just like 1971 war crisis. The students, you really have to make them understand in an objective way that who was wrong and who was not. So maybe we need to work more on narrative. What I will give a simple is that Kashmiri resilience is pronounced. This is something that is beyond the scholarship. It exists, and we have to recognize this. I have interacted with the Srinagar Central University recently as a part of the project on women in South Asia. So even they recognize that. But how to do or go about it is a very difficult situation, given the hostility that exists between the both sides. So what we are seeing here is that Kashmiris are facing a 700,000 occupation force, or you can say the Indian forces on their land, and they feel very numbed. They feel very isolated, but they continue to resist. How that resistance has been, it is at times through the stones, it is at times through the suicide bombing, It is at times through using an indirect means of warfare, and it is also at times through a proactive means. So my point is that India is not challenged by an equal army. We have to come out of this myth as a researchers. And second is, this is or not even an organized asymmetric warfare. There was a time when the Kashmiri resistance, you can keep it off record or whatever, a lot of evidence suggests that the proxies and the support from Pakistan existed, whether officially and unofficially. And there's still many ways. It can be, you can say it moral, you can say it legal, you can say it institutional, but the fact is, it is there. So, but the symmetric level has gone up and down given the changes in the regional and global scenario. And it is facing the guerrilla warfare. So I'm not going to, go into it. The fact is that the Kashmir special status has been revoked. It is no longer the one that used to be before 2019. It is also the one where even the internet embargo was placed. Imagine what we saw after all political riots in Pakistan, internet, Facebook down, and we were so helpless, even as the researchers. Imagine the people who have lived in that embargo and again, we were within our country, safe and sound. Actually, we were detoxing. I really enjoyed being off from the net. And but the fact is that they can't even write, they can't even learn, they can't even have source of income, they can't even have a telemedicine because the medication and the other way is also curtailed during the COVID and others, just because they were Kashmiri Muslims. So this is something, and this is something that has been not only reported in Pakistan, internationally, regionally, and across the world. All the forums continue to speak on it, OIC, whatever, UN, and all the forum. But the fact is, unfortunately, nothing has happened. But to me, it looks that Indian state terrorism is the best example that you can use. Because why I'm using this parameter? Because after 9/11, unfortunately, the real self-determination movement has been replaced by the acts of terrorism. And this is something, nomenclature and narrative, that has seeped into the minds of our young generation. And believe me, everybody has started doubting. The people who are against a state for a particular policy, even within our country or outside, they're seen as the anti-state. So this and the indigenous struggles have really suffered. And to me, I feel that if it is our responsibility. We have to have a critical terrorism studies here. I focus mostly on that. So we need to be never saying that there is no, it is an act of terrorism. It is there's a whole stream of literature that is available. Critical realism, critical terrorism studies. They all say why we are shying away from the fact that the state does the terrorism. It is not only India, it is in almost all the states that have done that. But of course, state remains the most powerful actor in the global interaction. So there is economic expression, there is a demographic, there is a political, there is a constitutional. Um, so the prize again is the people want, the Kashmiris in Indian occupied wants, and also the diaspora outside. Kashmiri diaspora is very resilient. I have come and interacted with excellent friends from Bradford and others in England. They are so committed. This is their fourth generation since 60s early. And they keep on sending the money and the moral and the written part. And they're even sponsoring the fees of the students in Western countries to think of in a new way, how they can help it. So they even say that the state terrorism is something that we should not be ashamed of labeling India on that. How much time I have? 5 minutes? Oh, great. That's nice. वो आर्मी के मीटिंग रूम्स के बाहर रखा होता है ना, ग्रीन लाइट हो गई अंदर जाए. So this is also, we know that the freedom, last point is very important. Freedom of movement, assembly, association, speech and expression, right to life, information and religion are severely limited. This was the last time, I think, they had a big issue on Qurbani. And the last year before that, the Eid, Namaz-e-Eid was not offered, was not allowed in the mosque. This has happened in case of occupied Kashmir. And also, most importantly, is that if you cannot move, where you go? What is the scapegoat? They're leaving Indian occupied. There are also intercommunal marriages happening in Kashmir part. And these are also a sort of paper marriages as well, to move into the mainstream as well. I remember meeting the one very known journalist back in Wilton Park someday. I said, "What you write on it?" He said, "We write on weather only. To survive, write on weather only. Because if we write something from this side, the proxies will kill us. If we write the other side, they will kill us. So we have to make the money. And then that is the best way." And he's a lawyer as well in New Delhi, big name. So what I will say is that it is a freedom struggle and it is a justified self-determination movement. And our case in Pakistan so far has been that the UN, after the resolutions and others, and not only in Kashmir, right of self-determination is a recognized element of UN thesis on conflict resolution. Since it is that, why not? Why not people or the big powers are not interested in doing anything? Just because this problem does not hurt them. If it was in the oil-rich province, situation might have different. This is my own feeling. Iraq came into Kuwait and everybody got very, first Gulf War, rushed to restore democracy. Why? It was to restore the oil excess. Whom they are going to restore in Kashmir? They're going to restore the medicines or the others miseries. They don't want to act. This is three elements from the freedom struggle. I think you'll be better placed to speak on that. I have not placed the armed movement because everybody knows it is, of course, the armed movement as well. I feel these three blocks are very important. Political side of the movement, peaceful protest, boycotts, youth and women peaceful activism. Meanwhile, whole diplomacy and movements, and of course, you and other people going around, it is all an advocacy and a political activism. Diplomacy, what are the forums that they are using? United Nations, international organizations, Muslim countries, and then Western capitals and lobbying Indian civil society. Rahul Gandhi has given much better statements as it, but I don't believe he will solve the problem because he is also the same lineage of the Gandhis that have betrayed as well, their own words. But still, I feel this is something that Pakistan has really need to do more homework about it. We have to somehow re-energize our lobbying with the Indian civil society. Media is of course Kashmir Wala. You must have come across that as a big name into the internet work, online advocacy, documentaries, and so forth. So these are some of the statements. Burhan Wani was something that gave a new life, not a new life, but revived or a new impetus to the youth to fight for it. This is very important. After 2019, Fayyaz I've followed his work as well. Our tongues, our pens have been sealed. And I think this is something very chronic and something to any nation that you make a person silent. And just the last point is India says it is a Pakistan-sponsored movement. Yes, it is Pakistan-sponsored movement. One should not be, but to say it is the only Pakistan-sponsored movement is wrong. Pakistan is not the one who has done the initial bad homework there. People of Kashmir owe to Pakistan a support they must give. Because this is something, the other part, we have Azad Kashmir and them, they are a part of the partition plan. And that has not been delivered. So Pakistan is right to be part of that. So are the Kashmiris. That is the third element, and that is so far both governments come and go. They are not ready for it. And Rajita Roy, you can always say it is only things the Kashmiri wants. Denial is delusion. And I think it applies to everybody, even in the life. Why New Delhi Boulevard? It's very interesting. New Delhi wants to talk to everybody except Pakistan. Then they want to Kashmir, Pakistan, but no Kashmir. Then they want to talk, we will solve it bilaterally. And the last cartoon is, there is no issue to talk about. Shut the windows. Thank you so much for your patience.
Thank you, ma'am, for your valuable insights. And you rightly pointed out that more work is required in narrative building. And it has become very challenging to make the young minds or young generation to understand the reality of Kashmir today. With this, I invite the second speaker, Dr. Mujahid Gillani, to shed light on the subject.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. First of all, I'm really grateful the Institute of Regional Studies, Ambassador Nadeem Riaz Saab, for giving me an opportunity. And I'm really grateful to Professor Shabana Fayyaz as well for her kind words. So, as Professor Shabana mentioned in her talk as well, Kashmir basically is a huge book. It's a dynamic book, and it has a lot of chapters in it. Just like the articles that she mentioned about political struggle, about the diplomatic struggle, about what the people on the ground are trying to achieve through communication and interaction with the outside world. What I have done today is to present before you a very small chapter of the Kashmir dynamics. Let's talk about the women of resilience. So Kashmir basically is a case study of human rights violations. Just like I mentioned, it's a huge book, and just like any book has different topics and chapters in it, Kashmir has a lot of cases, which I have mentioned briefly as the Kashmiri women, the rape victims, the child abusers, education disaster, chemical weapons, half widows, missing persons. Remember one thing, you cannot talk about Kashmir as a whole, because if you do, you're definitely going to miss upon a lot of details, a lot of things. But take each chapter separately, and that's where we are going to get it. So, as a case of Kashmiri women, if we go along with it, they have not remained alienated to the ongoing freedom struggle in Kashmir. Actually, they have been one of the most prominent and one of the most helpful and strongest element of the freedom struggle that goes on. For if the men are on the roads, the women have not stayed behind the closed doors. They've paid the price in terms of being beaten to pulp, as you can see in the pictures as well. You see, they're students, they're Kashmiri students. These are the students who come out on the road against all these brutalities that are being committed by the Indian terrorist forces over there. No matter what has happened in the Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir, the female Kashmiri students have been on the road with bags in one hand and stones in the other. Yes, rape has been used as a weapon of war. The Kashmiri women do not term themselves as victims. They consider themselves as warriors, despite the fact that more than 22,000 women in the Indian occupied Jammu and Kashmir have been raped reportedly. And one of the most notorious of incidents that took place back on the 23rd of February 1991 was the event of Kanan Bashpura, when two villagers were raped by 44th Rajputana Rifles in one night. Females from the age of 8 till 80. Nobody was spared. And that's not just one incident, that's not just one event. As you can see over there, Chak Saidpura in 1992, Haran, Doda, Shupaya, and Mubina the Bride, one of the most popular or famous incidents that took place, where every woman deserves to be raped because she is a Kashmiri. Vehement and stealth braid chopping, started back in 2016 and continued till 2022. More than 40% post-traumatic stress disorders were reported by the Doctors Without Borders in the Kashmiri women. As you can see, half widows. Every conflict zone has its own terminologies that are being coined as the conflict progresses. So what are half widows? Indian Army has arrested a huge number of men, and no one knows whether they're alive or not. Their wives came to be known as half widows, and their children, particularly when the mother was taken as well, came to be known as half orphans. The parents, supposedly alive, but never seen under the open sky. Just a pictorial presentation. And once again, a few facts and figures. And let me tell you, these facts and figures are always evolving. Even today, as we sit and speak, 2 Kashmiri youth were martyred 2 days back. The numbers just increase, and every day there's an addition to it. So these are the women of resilience. The Kashmir conflict has compelled the women to embrace new roles. It's not just roti pakana, ghar ka khayal rakhna. It is actually that they have shouldered responsibilities outside their homes, and they have faced the Indian atrocities in the absence of their men inside the houses as well. A few examples that I have quoted: Mahajabi, a woman of Kashmir. Mahajabi is the wife of a resident, Mahajabi is the wife of a Kashmiri Mujahid, I will actually say. Sharjeel, 30 years old, she was widowed. That's her face, and that's her husband. Parveena Ahangar, one of the most famous names in Kashmir history as well. Parveena Ahangar and Imroz Parvez, they were awarded Raptor Prize back in 2017. She's also the chairperson of APDP, Association of the Parents of Disappeared Persons. And by now, she has all the records of the missing persons in the Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir. Kanan Peshpura, the incident that I just narrated, for more than 30 years, no justice system spoke about the heinous crime. And there were 5 women who wrote a book on it, and not only wrote a book on it, but rather also brought this case, in the eyes of the Indian judicial system. Not that we expect any justice at all. Anjum Samud Habib, she has served 5 years in the notorious Tihar jail of India in New Delhi. She has also written a book on it by the name of Prisoner Number 100. Shamali Begum. Shamali Begum is a true heroine of the Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir, the mother of Maqbool Butt Shaheed. She has given 4 sons to this. 2 other sons were martyred. 1 is among the missing persons, and the 4th one is in the jail. 4 sons to the freedom struggle. And even till now, the remains of Maqbool Butt Shaheed are in the Indian Tihar jail. Bring his body back. Insha Mushtaq, the protagonist of the pellet victims. The first one, she was targeted by the Indian terrorist forces, aged only 14 years at that time. She was only sitting by her window, and that's when she was hit by it. Today, Insha Mushtaq has actually cleared her matriculation exam, and just recently, she passed her HSSC or the 12th exam as well. See the effort that the Kashmiri children have to put in. She learned the Braille system. She learned how to read through it, to give the exams, and she cleared it. Masud Zara, one of the most famous journalists that we have in the Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir, aged just 27 years. She was awarded some of the most difficultly pronounced awards, international awards, that is, definitely. But unfortunately, she was booked under UAPA and PSA and was taken to jail as well. However, fortunately, Masud Zara at this point in time is safe and outside. But this is what the fate of a Kashmiri journalist is whenever she or he exposes the Indian lies. Ensha Jan, a 23 years old Ensha Jan, she was arrested by the National Investigation Agency Supposedly, she had helped a Kashmiri Mujahid in carrying out an operation. And mind it, any operation that is carried out by the indigenous forces, by the indigenous Kashmiri Mujahideen and people, is very much valid, is very much legal, even by all the international norms, international legalities, and the United Nations resolutions. Fahmida Sufi, associate of Sayyida Asya and Rabi, right now currently lodged in the Indian Tihar jail for the past almost 7 years continuously now. She's just 35 years old and has a lot of backache. The last time that I was able to talk to her, she was in a lot of pain. Nahida Nasreen, one of the friends of Sayyida Asya and Rabi, right now lodged in Indian Tihar jail again. She was booked for waging war against India, for her anti-state activities, for creating disaffection among the people against the state of India. But this is how a freedom fighter looks. Last but not the least, Sayyida Asya and Rabi. Sayyida Asya and Rabi, I proudly announce, I proudly say, she's the youngest sister of my mother. And she's behind bars for the past almost 12 years now, right now in Indian Tihar jail. I just got to talk to her last week. And she still has high spirits and still talks of Azadi. Her nephew is also a martyr to the same ideology. That's my elder brother, actually. So this is a short, small poem written by my cousin. She studies in class 10 in the Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir, the resident of Kanyar. This was written by her, and I thought it merits enough that it should be posted over here. So thank you. This was the last slide. I understand that it doesn't really completely cover the topic, but still, it was a small chapter of the whole book of the Kashmir dynamics, and I believe that we must know and understand all these chapters separately, because to be really honest, I believe perhaps you never knew Shamali Begum's name. Perhaps you really knew who Sayyida Asya and Rabi would be in totality, who Majabi was. Perhaps you really didn't know about Parveena Ahangar or Masrat Zahra in this detail. So get to understand, this is our political struggle. This is our military struggle. This is our armed struggle to get Azadi. Azadi from the Indian illegal occupation, a destination that we very clearly envision. For any trade relationships, for any other developmental lollipops, that's not where a Kashmiri would stop for. A Kashmiri will look for only one thing, and that's Azadi. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. And you rightly highlighted that Kashmir is a case study of human rights. And Kashmiri women do not consider themselves as victims, but a real freedom fighter. With this, I invite my third speaker, Ms. Sobia Khurseed, to speak on the subject, please.
Pointer read. Thank you. First of all, I would like to thank you, Institute of Regional Studies and Ambassador Nadeem, for this opportunity to speak on this very significant topic. As Dr. Mujahid and Dr. Shabana has already mentioned that, if we talk about the struggle of freedom in Kashmir, there are many chapters. So I'll be broadly touching the contours of only one chapter that began on August 6, 2019. That was after the abrogation of Article 370 by a presidential act. Now, there could be many facets to look at this chapter. It could be political, constitutional, legal, and international aspects
to look at this. However, I chose to speak about the life in general of men and women who are under the illegal occupation in Kashmir. So on August 6, 2019, the government of India revoked the special status or autonomy that was given to the Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir. The article is important because it conferred power on Jammu and Kashmir to have a separate constitution, a state flag, and autonomy over the internal administration of the state. This article, along with the Citizenship Amendment Act, defined that Jammu and Kashmir's residents live under a separate set of laws, including those related to citizenship, ownership of property, and fundamental rights as compared to other Indian states. By revoking the Article 370, it has become now an occupation with an unlawful annexation. All Kashmiri leadership has opposed the move. It has seized the only chord between India and Kashmir, and it's the fundamental breach of instrument of accession signed by Maharaja Hari Singh. You see, it was a very calculated move. Before the Presidential Act, New Delhi spent additional 35,000 troops. As Dr. Shabana already mentioned, that there are already 700,000 troops were already present, and they sent additional 35,000 troops to manage those around 30 million people to revoke that status. The formal abrogation was followed by months of mass curfew, communication blockouts, zero internet, cell phone. They were practically cut off from the rest of the world. Political leaders were put under house arrest, and some of them have passed away under the house arrest. And some of them are still suffering the brutalities of the regime. The BJP regime has imposed around 518 internet shutdowns and has totally undermined the freedom of speech and expression of the people of Kashmir. Kashmir is one of the least reported conflict according to UNHCR, and it is one of the most dangerous places for the journalist. When we talk about the development of India, it is now a buzzword across Pakistan and across the world. But when we see the realities, the unemployment rate in Kashmir is 25%. It's a huge, whereas in general in India, it's 7.6%. The disparity is quite visible. The violence against women has been increased 11-fold since 2020. Rape is frequently used as weapon of war, and you can see the numbers, and numbers are varying on daily basis. In so-called dead eye epidemic, there have been around 30,000 reported cases of pellets and people being blinded by pellet gun. And there is no distinction of age. A baby, the youngest pellet gun victim, Hiba, of only 10 months old. She was also hit by the pellet gun. Now, India has trying legally to annex Kashmir by delimitation. It is systematically trying to change the demographies of Kashmiris by changing the constituencies of Muslim majority areas into Hindu majority areas. The Delimitation Commission is the manifestation of their agenda. Demographic manipulation is on the rise. India is trying to dilute the relevance of ethnic Kashmiris. So according to the reports which were being published by Indian agencies and Indian government, in 2021, their website refers that population of Kashmir is predominantly Hindus, whereas the same government site shows that in 21, according to the census of 2011, it was Muslim majority area. So you see the systematic change in demographies of the population of Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir to convert into majority Hindu state. BJP is working on religious cleansing through fanning Islamophobia to incite Hindutva. When you look at this as a student, as a researcher, and as a thinker, as a philosopher, you think about it, you see that it is a systematic structural oppression that relates with the ideology of Hindutva. So I have tried to establish a link between Hindutva and Kashmir. For last 76 years, India's Hindutva-driven regime is conducting terrorism. It's a state-sponsored terrorism, and it is keeping the people of occupied territories under siege. Hindutva is the politics of supremacy through maximization and manifestation of power. It's a measure of hard and soft security and high and low politics. If you see Hindutva, there is no or zero political will to coexist with your neighbors, with your minorities, and with other people, except the Hindu high caste people. It has reduced the appetite for peace for neighbors, for neighboring countries, and even for the minorities. Under the structural realism theory and IR theory, it's a competitive security calculus, which places that minorities are a threat to your state. They are not able to live as an equal citizen of your state. It's a perceptual paradox which places every other minority, especially Muslims, as a threat to the government. It's a dilemma of their own interpretation that Hind only belongs to Hindus. And it's a dilemma of response which they respond to brutal violence through the state force. So India now is trying hard to become a regional power, and we often discuss that unipolarity is going to change. So India is trying to have a major position on the table, and they are trying to gain that position through Hindutva. Hindutva seeks to construct an exclusive society through religious, political, and social polarization. And illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir is the only state that presents the true picture of a state colonized by India. India now, after the revocation of Article 370, has lost the support of like-minded Kashmiris, the political leaders of Kashmir. New Delhi is using its own resources and institutions to terrorize Kashmir through constitutional changes, ethnic and religious cleansing, fear, political remapping, excessive torture, human rights violation, economic terrorism, electoral engineering, and name whatnot. India seeks dilution of intensity of Kashmiri freedom struggle through state-sponsored terrorism. Here is a slide I have flashed some of the brutalities which I was able to calculate, some of the figures from various websites. Again, they are varying in every single minute. So you can see the numbers, they might seem easy on the tongue, but they are very hard for the families and for the people who have actually been gone through these issues. Gruesome tortures, they might feel sensitive to your ears and they need trigger warning. However, just imagine the pain, the people who suffered these things. Some of the techniques which include drowning, stripping of flesh razors, piping petrols into your bodies, amputating limbs, and making prisoner eat their own flesh. Now, India has legalized all these brutalities by a special power act. The occupation forces enjoy virtual blanket immunity to any accountability. Indian government has woven many other legal frameworks, among them Public Safety Act is one. These allow Indian Army to demolish any properties. They can kill any individual and claim it that it was a terrorist without any legal documents, without any other. Hindutva and Kashmir, now there are voices inside India who are against the ongoing Hindutva terrorism, saffron terrorism, or Hindutva ideology, which is undermining the rights of minorities in India. You can see the quotes by A.S. Dolat and Yashwant Sinha. They had said that India has created a mess in Kashmir. India, now there is another, I would like to sensitize the students about this, that many students and many scholars are now using this phrase that India is very diplomatically engaged and diplomatically active on every forum. They were being truly able to portray that narrative. But when you make a little research, you see that what was the international response after the revocation of Article 370? So when you go through and made some research, you will see that Kashmir has become a real challenge, diplomatic challenge for India after Article 370. Many states have condemned. Pakistan spearheaded the campaign and was able to persuade China to call on a private meeting to discuss a meeting at United Nations Security Council. You can see US legislators wrote a letter to US Secretary of State and saying, they said, and I quote, that there is a need to investigate reports to abuse. Similarly, United Nations Human Rights Chief Michelle, she said, and I quote, that restrictions on internet communication and peaceful assembly and the detention of local political leaders and activities is alarming. Similarly, you can see from European Parliament and the states of Saudi Arabia and United Arab Emirates have also extended their diplomatic supports for the cause of Kashmir. And majority of the Muslim world, among them, Turkey was very vocal. I would like to end my slides and my presentation. Recently, India has held a G20 tourism meeting in Kashmir, and all of you must have heard it. And there was a sense of sorrow and sense of fear among Pakistanis that India has normalized its occupation in illegal Kashmir. So under the new brand name, Nya Kashmir or New Kashmir, India has tried to portray a normal Kashmir, and it has miserably failed during that. You see, when it was hosting the meeting, UN Special Rapporteur on Minority Issues said the government of India is seeking to normalize what some have described as a military occupation by instrumentalizing a G20 meeting and portraying an international seal of approval. Then the refusal of key players such as China, Turkey, Saudi Arabia, and India even extended its invitation to Egypt, which refused to participate, shows that international community has least but still has a pinch of concern about the Kashmir issue. Another thing, G20 meeting, everybody knows about that it is cyclic. So India has now been labeled that it hold whenever somebody is going to talk about the G20 meeting in India, it's going to quote that it's a contentious move in the history. I would end my presentation that Kashmir is not a mere territorial dispute between the two states. It's a human right issue. It's a human issue. And after 76 years, it is now again in the spotlight. There is a huge need to resolve this issue between India and Pakistan according to United Nations resolution, and the one that takes into account the aspiration and rights of the people of Kashmir. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much. And you rightly pointed out that by revoking the Article 370, Kashmir has become a case study of occupation within. But unfortunately, the occupied Jammu and Kashmir has become least reported internationally. With this, I would like to open the floor for a question and answer round. So if there is a question, please go ahead. Yes.
Self-determination. It's the case of self-determination, but Mujahid Sahab said this is the freedom struggle. So here we find the, the confusion about narrative. How can we build the narrative when we are still divided? What is the Kashmir cause? Whether it is the case of a self-determination or it's a freedom struggle. One thing. And secondly, I just want to know that how many Kashmiris take this in the Indian side of occupation, that how many Kashmiris think that this self-determination is the only solution, or how many think that the Kashmir struggle is very important. So what is the thought over there?
With the permission of Dr. Shabana, I'd like to respond to this question. See, first of all, the most important thing is that as far as Pakistan is concerned, Pakistan has this case paused in the United Nations. And the United Nations has clearly given its verdict that the people of Jammu and Kashmir, the whole state of Jammu and Kashmir, will decide their future on the basis of a fair, impartial, and free plebiscite, the right of self-determination. So as far as the legality is concerned, or as far as the international arena is concerned, whenever we are going to talk about it, we are going to talk about it as the right of self-determination, particularly if any Pakistani or an Indian, for example, talks about it. But as a Kashmiri, I have a complete, full, independent right of saying, I want to merge with Pakistan. As a Kashmiri, I have that right, and nobody can say anything to me. This is the same thing that Sayyid Ali Gillani used to chant slogans of when he used to say that Hum Pakistani hai and ye Pakistan hamara hai. And his voice was not the only and lone voice. In fact, thousands of Kashmiris used to repeat the very same words and sentences after him. So point one, whenever you're talking of the ground, when you're talking of the ground realities, you cannot obliterate and omit the green flag from the ground. One, two. But whenever you're talking on the international arenas, you're talking to the movers and shakers, you're talking to the United States, you're talking to whichever other forum, you will be talking about the right of self-determination. The second part of your question is how many people or how many Kashmiris consider that this struggle should go on, or perhaps maybe we should surrender or give in to the brutalities of the Indian occupational forces. I believe even today, as we are talking on this whole conflict, the 19th of July 2023, back in 1947, 19th of July 1947, of course, many of those the people who were present at that time in a very similar environment are not present now. But at that time, on the 19th of July 1947, at Abe Guzar in Srinagar, in the Indian occupied Jammu and Kashmir now, at the residence of Sardar Ibrahim Khan, the first president of Azad Jammu and Kashmir, in the presence of several other Kashmiri Muslim leaders, they passed a resolution. Today, we observe the Yom-e Qaraardad-e Pakistan. So we Kashmiris essentially acceded to Pakistan even before Pakistan was formed, back in 1947. And today, in 2023, just a few days back, we observed the martyrdom anniversary of Burhan Muzaffar Wani. What does that tell you? What we stood for back in 1947, we are standing for it in 2023 as well. Thank you. Ma'am.
I would like to add a bit. I think what your question is also valid from one point of view. There is no second point saying that the Indian occupied Kashmiri youth and others, they are not committed to the cause. But I think we also need to put this in ways that it is more of a narrative building, and it is a generated narrative building from outside into the Kashmiri youth as well, both from this side and from the Indian occupied side. And that is why if you go back in 90s or others, loads of scholarships were offered in the West from the Indian occupied for Kashmiris. And, the whole diplomacy meanwhile started becoming the star because he was invited. Of course, one cannot afford and move around. So what was the purpose? The purpose, if my reading is that, the big powers, they don't want India-Pakistan war. What they want? They want third formula Musharraf. ये आपका है, ये हमारा है. And this is very cruel. अगर है भी तो किस terms पे है? This is number two. And unfortunately, it's narrative war में, I think what we have witnessing in Pakistan, I must say, Indian Kashmiris who are, Indian occupied, they're suffering others. Even their counterparts who are living here, they are not that much pushed. They cook the same dishes. I'm sorry to say that. They sell the carpets, they sell the shawls, and some are very, very comfortable and, very proud. I've been visiting their homes. Excellent dishes, excellent people. But the problem is that there is a sort of fatigue. They said, कब तक हम ये करेंगे? और ये बात मैंने बहुत देखी है हमारे पाकिस्तानी यूथ में भी. वो कहते हैं कि जी हमारी तो आपकी भी उम्र गुजर गई, हमारी भी गुजर जाएगी. आप इसका मसला तो निकालते नहीं है. ये तो दिस इज अ गिमिक टू बी यूज्ड फ्रॉम बोथ साइड्स टू बी एंगेज्ड मिलिटरी. तो ये जो फीलिंग है ना, वो एक्चुअली दिस टेल्स अस दैट हमारा अपना नैरेटिव बहुत वीक है. और इसमें हमारा पाकिस्तानियों का नहीं है, इसमें कश्मीरीज के इंडिजिनस का भी बहुत वीक है. मेरे बड़े कश्मीरी स्टूडेंट्स हैं, अभी मैंने PhD भी आपको बताया कर रहे हैं उनसे. मैं हमेशा उनसे पूछती भाई ये चलो प्रॉक्सी वॉर हुई, अगले पिछले कोई दादा कोई आगे, जैसे यू हैव अ होल हिस्ट्री. आपने कोई आपकी हिस्ट्री में आगे पीछे कोई गया, कोई पानी के जरिए किसी तरह? वो कहते नहीं. तो मैंने कहा तो ये तो सारे पंजाब से जा रहे हैं जितने आप सारे देखे थे, व्हाट अबाउट यू? तो कहते वी डोंट वांट टू वेस्ट अ टाइम. और ये इतनी नेगेटिव चीज है कि आप उसको सिक्योरिटाइज किया गया है इशू को इतना ज्यादा कि जिनका इशू है वो डिमोरलाइज हो रहे हैं. एंड आई थिंक दिस इज द वॉर ऑफ आइडियाज, एंड वी रियली नीड टू वर्क हार्ड ऑन इट. वी रीड द लिटरेचर गिवन बाय देम. हमारी अपनी बुक हम प्रिंट कराते तो हमारी पढ़ता ही कोई नहीं, हमारे यहाँ रिवाज ही कोई नहीं. अब तो मैं कहती हूँ कि हम oral books करा दें, that will be more interested. Yeah, you can listen to the articles and others. But this is something the researchers have to be enforced. I'm not saying that you tell, but you have to develop your own narrative. इतनी courage जो है ना वो माननी नहीं चाहिए बच्चों की. Critical thinking is very important. हम्म हम्म आप JKLF का ओरिजिनल पार्ट देख लें, यासीन साहब का, उनका क्या था, यही था ना कि हम इंडिपेंडेंट है, कोई पसंद नहीं करता था यासीन मलिक साहब को, फिर उसके बाद ही रिवॉल्व, ही चेंज, ही इवॉल्व एंड इज एन एक्सीलेंट लीडर। और उसके बाद आप देखें कि जब जब उसने उस लाइन पे आए हैं तो वो बात की है। तो ये जो एक थर्ड ऑप्शन जो है, ये थर्ड ऑप्शन कोई अलहदा से मुल्क तो नहीं बनेगा ना, लेकिन कम से कम आजादी तो मिले ना। तो दिस इज समथिंग आई थिंक वी नीड टू पुट अप।
With your permission, I would like to add a few points to what Dr. Shabana has said. I belong to Kashmir, and I belong to that part of Kashmir which is called Azad Kashmir. So I born and raised in my family. I belong to the family of Sardar Ibrahim Khan. So when we say that the youth is disappointed, yes, the youth is disappointed. When we say that they are not willing to engage, they are not willing to do. I have seen in my childhood and during the early years of my education, off the record, there were rampant institutions and kids of age. Even if you have the chance to go and visit any graveyard in Kashmir, you will see Gumnam Kabri of young adults of 25, 20 years, 21 years, who go and fight for freedom. So they are desperate to take freedom of self-determination, whatever you name it. They want to have a consolidated part. It's enough of fragmentation. One part is divided, another part is divided. And sorry, I got emotional because from my family, young adults were so desperate to fight for the cause. They even did not seek the permission of their mothers, and they voluntarily crossed the border and they got martyred. So, people of Kashmir, on both sides, I would not compare the atrocities being committed in Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir with the life we are living. Yes, we are enjoying everything. We have freedom, we have respect. And the most important thing, when a woman of our area goes out to college, school, university, or any other place, she goes with a conviction, and her father and her family is in the faith that she'll come back to home safely. And that's the most fundamental freedom what I feel in my growing years, which the woman of Kashmir does not feel, and which the woman of Kashmir does not enjoy. I'm talking about Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir. And yes, when we talk about the ground realities, there are developmental lags, there are economic challenges. Most of our youth goes for foreign jobs and other things. So yes, we focused on those things because it's a disputed region. You cannot set any factory, you cannot set any enterprise. There could be no foreign aid or any other things. Physically, infrastructure develop karna aur ye sari cheezein problematic hain. So people of Kashmir are desperate. And when it calls to freedom, the contested terminology of freedom or right of self-determination. So what I feel that the people of Kashmir, and it's my own opinion, and people of Kashmir wants that they should be a party to the issue. When you talk about Kashmir, there should not be two parties, India and Pakistan. The self-identity of Kashmiri people, whether they want freedom or whether they want right of self-determination, it should be their choice. And it should be asked to them what they imply. And that's my own understanding. Thank you.
We need freedom or independence from both the countries per se. But that is once again, I'm not the representative of the whole of state of Jammu and Kashmir. but I know that my family is essentially followed by a very huge clout over there as well. So if I'm talking about hum Pakistani hai and Pakistan hamara hai, I talked with a certain confirmation and stand. Let's not put the horse before the cart. Let's clear our vision that we, first of all, need independence, we need freedom, we need salvation from the Indian clutches. And then, yes, of course, you can talk to me, you can talk to her. We are both Kashmiris. Ask us about her choice, and we can decide about it.
ये जो हमारी सियासत मेनलैंड चली गई ना, मैं प्रैक्टिकली फील करती हूँ कि ये बड़ा काम खराब।
बिल्कुल दुरुस्त कह रही हैं।
फंड यहाँ से सकते हैं, या यहाँ गवर्नमेंट उनको वहाँ लाने की मजबूरी है। I've been interacting with them and
Absolutely.
असल मसला है ना, उसको आप कारपेट कर रहे हैं और वो इंडिया पे ये फोटो पहले ही कर रहे हैं और इनडायरेक्टली हम भी कर रहे हैं। और ये बड़ी गलत चीज है कि आप जैसे इंडिजिनस इतने प्रेशर आ जाते हैं कि वो बेचारे इंडिजिनस म्यूजियम में कुछ जाना प्रोग्राम में लगता है। I think this is killing.
So, ma'am, with regard to what you just said, so what is the way forward for Pakistan?
I think Pakistan from two or three, state level, people level, bilateral and international. Bilateral, we have been sending the delegations. We have special rapporteur. We have, for everything, and we have Maulana Fazlur Rehman. You know him well. Holding it for long his own life, the dream chair, Kashmir. And although he has a soft corner for that, that's good. Internationally, lobbying is very good. But we also need to understand we have to have a smart lobbying on Kashmir. आप हम 40 बंदे को जहाज में बिठा के होटल में बिठा दें तो, और अब गवर्नमेंट के पास भी पैसे नहीं है, वो उधर के कश्मीरी डायस्पोरा इनके फर्निश करते हैं, तो वो अगर आप करें तो आई थिंक that becomes a vacation. We don't need vacation. We basically need a multi-pronged strategy, and that should be a smart strategy. And that should be a proactive approach. जैसे आपने कहा ना कि जी इतना आप पहले मसला तो आगे तो चले ना. And सबसे बड़ा challenge, I think, challenge for Pakistan is how to make a powerful, dominant, aggressive neighbor come to at peace with a lesser capacity. This is a bigger challenge. हमारे पे ज्यादा problem है. एक coercive diplomacy होती है, एक anti-coercive model है. अब हमने उसे engage कैसे करना है? तो internationally हमारा ये है. And I think bilaterally, Pakistan and India at heart, any Indian अगर आप उनसे बात करें और पाकिस्तानी, they want peace. They are also fed up, frankly. They are fed up. हम even New Delhi के best से बरखा से किसी से भी बात कर लेना, वो अंदर से ये कहते कि मुके खत्म करो. अच्छा, अब जो कश्मीरीज हैं उनको भी फटीक आ गई. So we need to open up. We had a very good. I myself visited not Kashmir, the Delhi and Bombay. In a platform, I was a coordinator of Women Without Borders. So we talked of terrorism and this and that, and in that we plugged in the Kashmir, what they are going through it, and they listened to us because they were telling us कि जी आपने सारा ताजमहल का और वो हुआ था. तो अब लेकिन अब आप ये देख लें कि bilaterally हमें दोबारा करना पड़ेगा, और हम जैसे भी करें, ड्रामास का करें, कुछ भी करें, boycott is not an answer. They can afford a boycott, we cannot. मैं तो हमेशा ये समझती हूँ. And now coming to the state is pursuing a good policy, but it needs not to be a reactive. Kashmiri days should be celebrated. तो आप मकानों को, रोडों को नाम बदल देंगे, बात कुछ भी नहीं होनी. मुझे तो समझ नहीं आती हम क्यों नाम बदली जाते हैं. और and the third is the society level. ये हमारा और आपका काम है. Community mentors हैं, media है, journalist है. आप don't think them with a suspicion. और हमारा रोल स्टेट ना देखे, और हमारा रोल ये है टू गिव अ पॉजिटिव पिक्चर टू द यूथ. हमें सब पता है, तीनों आप प्रेजेंटेशन चारों से एक फीलिंग ऑफ डिप्रेशन आता है. आप हमारा रोल बड़ा डिफिकल्ट है, हाउ टू क्रिएट अ होप फ्रॉम द डिप्रेशन, एंड इट्स अ बिग चैलेंज. एंड फॉर दैट चैलेंज यू मेक देम डू द गेमिंग ऑन कश्मीर. मैं तो अपने स्टूडेंट्स को गेमिंग कराती हूँ, सिनेरियो बिल्डिंग कराती हूँ, so that they have to use their brains because they are future leaders. So for me, it's an uphill task for Mera, and it's a sustainable approach. And I think if the dialogues like these continue to happen, at least अगर 100 30 میں سے 2 تو سن ہی لیں گے نا. So it may reflect, and I think that is a good process you can take. State and society کا جب تک پاکستان اینڈ میں کانٹریکٹ صحیح نہیں ہوگا, پاکستان کشمیر پالیسی کبھی بھی نہیں ڈلیور نہیں کرے گی, پیپر پہ بن جائے گی. تھینک یو سو مچ.
Assalamu alaikum. We have our fourth speaker with us, Mr. Yasir Hussain. Sir, Yasir Rehman sir, I would like to give the floor to you to speak on the subject. And you have 10 minutes, sir.
رحیم جی, تھینک یو ویری مچ آپ مجھے انوائٹ کرنے کے لیے. میں اسٹوڈنٹ ہوں, کشمیر کے اوپر تھوڑا سا اس ایشو کو سیکھنے کی کوشش کر رہا ہوں. کچھ تھوڑی سی پروجیکشنس کے حوالے سے بھی کوشش کرتا ہوں. کچھ چیزیں جو میں اوور دا پیریڈ آف ٹائم دیکھتا رہا ہوں, وہ ان کو میں اگر ڈیفائن کروں, وہ انٹرنل ہیں, ایکسٹرنل ہیں, اور کچھ ایسے فیکٹرز ہیں جو کہ آپ کہہ سکتے ہیں کہ جنہیں ہم نے وقت پہ چھوڑ دیا ہے. اگر ہم انٹرنل فیکٹرز کے حوالے سے بات کریں تو ہمیں وہ جو کوہیسونیس تھی ایک ٹائم کے اندر کشمیریت کے اوپر, کشمیر کے اوپر, ایشو آف کشمیر کے اوپر, وہ ہمیں نظر نہیں آتی. ہماری یوتھ کا اس میں قصور نہیں ہے. ہماری یوتھ کو جس طرح سے انگیج کیا جانا چاہیے تھا ایک سسٹمیٹک وے کے اندر, اس طرح نہیں کیا گیا. اب آپ کو ایک مذاق کی کیفیت لگتی ہے کہ کشمیر کی آزادی تک جو ہے وہ ادھار بند ہے. اس کا مطلب ہے کہ نہ ہی سمجھیں. بنیادی طور پہ ہمارے ذہنوں میں یہ بات ڈال دی گئی ہے کہ جو سٹیٹس کو ہے, جہاں پہ انڈیا بیٹھا ہے وہ انڈیا بیٹھا رہے گا. جو آزاد کشمیر کا علاقہ ہے, آپ نے اب یہ کرنا ہے کہ صرف اس کو بچا لیں تو بڑی بات ہے. بیسکلی ہم مینٹلی طور پہ انٹرنلی ڈیفینسو ہو چکے ہوئے ہیں. ہم نے جو ہماری ایک offensive پالیسی تھی اس کو ان مائی اوپینین ڈپلومیٹکلی بھی ترک کر دیا ہے اور کائنیٹکلی بھی ترک کر دیا ہے, اور جو باقی ہماری ایفرٹس ہونی چاہیے تھیں ہمارے ڈفرینٹ اینگلس کے اوپر, جیسے کہ 4th پلر آف اسٹیٹ میڈیا کو کہا جاتا ہے, اسے بھی ہم نے ترک کر دیا. اس کا نقصان یہ ہوا ہے, اگر آپ اس وقت دیکھیں تو ہمارے پورے الیکٹرانک میڈیا کے اندر مور دین 50 to 60 چینلز ہیں جو کہ آپ کی نیوز اینڈ کرنٹ افیئرس کو براڈ کاسٹ کرتے ہیں. اس میں آپ مجھے ماسوائے اسٹیٹ میڈیا کے, ان کی تو رسپانسبلٹی ہے کہ آپ اسٹیٹ نیریٹو دیں, ایک ماؤتھ پیس گورنمنٹ کا بنے, اسٹیٹ کا بنے, اور بتائیں کہ جی یہ اسٹیٹ کی پالیسی آن کشمیر. اس کے علاوہ کشمیریوں کو 50 سے 60 کشمیریوں کو جانے دینی پڑتی ہیں ایک خبرنامے میں ایک خبر لگوانے کے لیے, اور اس دن یہ خبرنامے میں خبر لگتی ہے کہ جی آج 60 کشمیریوں کو, 6 کشمیریوں کو, 10 کشمیریوں کو جو ہے وہ انڈین فورسز نے شہید کر دیا ہے. ایک خبر کے طور پہ چلتا ہے. ہمارے ٹاک شوز کے اندر پرابلم یہ ہے کہ ہمارے ٹاک شوز کے اندر آپ دیکھیں تو پرسنٹیج آف کشمیر ایشو جتنا ڈسکس کیا جاتا ہے دیٹ از اکولی ٹو نن. اگر آپ کی 5 اگست 2019 کو انہوں نے یاد کرنا ہے تو ایک چھوٹا سا کوشچن کر لیں گے, یا پھر وہ کسی 1931 کے واقعے کو یاد کرنا ہے, یا 8 جولائی برہان مظفر وانی کے حوالے سے بات کرنا ہے, کنان پوشپورہ کے حوالے سے بات کرنی ہے, جو اس کا پرسنٹیج ہوگی وہ بہت کم ہوگی. کشمیر کے اندر جو لیٹسٹ آج کل جو کچھ ہو رہا ہے وہ دنیا تو رپورٹ کرتی ہے کہیں نہ کہیں. آپ کو واشنگٹن پوسٹ نظر آتی ہے, نیو یارک ٹائم نظر آتا ہے, وائس آف امریکہ, بی بی سی, یہ ادارے, DW, یا ایز اے میٹر آف فیکٹ آپ کا جو ترکی کا TRT جو ہے وہ نظر اس پہ کام کر رہا ہوتا ہے. میرا جو گلہ ہے بینگ اے میڈیا پرسن وہ یہ ہے کہ میرا میڈیا مجھے کہیں نظر نہیں آتا اس ایشو کے اوپر. شاید اس پہ کمرشل اینگل نہیں ہے, شاید کہ ہماری اسٹیٹ ان کو اتنا زیادہ فوکس نہیں دلواتی کہ آپ اس کے اوپر کام کریں, اور شاید کہ ان کو یہ کہیں یہ گمان ہے کہ شاید یہ ایشو اس پہ کیا بات کرنی ہے, اب یہ تو یہ بیک برنر پہ چلا گیا ہے, ہم اس پہ کچھ نہیں کر سکتے. یہ تو میرے میڈیا کا انٹرنل حال ہے اس وقت, جو ڈسکشن بھی نہیں ہوتا. اگر میں اس کا کمپیریزن کروں انڈین میڈیا کے ساتھ تو میں آپ کو بتا سکتا ہوں کہ ان کے جو پرائم ٹائم شوز, بڑے چینلز, उनका जो मुद्दा होता है उसमें कश्मीर लाजमी होता है। 25% तो होता ही होता है। आप अर्नाब गोस्वामी का प्रोग्राम उठा के देख लें, आप किसी और का प्रोग्राम उठा के देख लें, फिर हम ये कैसे कह सकते हैं कि हम कश्मीर का जो है वो कश्मीर की जंग लड़ेंगे? अब जंग तो कश्मीर की लड़ी जा रही है 5th जनरेशन वॉरफेयर के अंदर, नैरेटिव्स की जंग है। आपका नैरेटिव, जब आप नैरेटिव देने की कोशिश ही नहीं करेंगे तो आप अपने नैरेटिव को दुनिया में कहां लेकर जा सकते हैं? यू स्टैंड नोवेयर। इसके बाद हम चले जाते हैं इंटरनेशनल मीडिया के ऊपर। इंटरनेशनल मीडिया, अल जजीरा को मैं रेगुलरली देखता रहता हूँ, बीबीसी को, वो कोशिश करते हैं कि इस इशू को उठाए रखें। कोई एक वाकया होता है, वो कुछ ना कुछ उसकी रिपोर्टिंग करते हैं। लेकिन हमारी एज अ स्टेट कह सकते हैं, गवर्नमेंट के तौर पे कह सकते हैं, प्रायोरिटी में नहीं है कि हम इंटरनेशनल मीडिया को एंगेज करें, उनको ये फर्क बताएं कि आजाद कश्मीर का जो रहने वाला बाशिंदा है वो आजादी के साथ जिंदगी गुजार रहा है, उसको वही मौके मैसर आ रहे हैं जो एक पाकिस्तानी को यहाँ मैसर आते हैं। आई माई सेल्फ बिलोंग टू कश्मीर, मेरा ताल्लुक मुजफ्फराबाद से है। मैं पाकिस्तान टेलीविजन का प्राइम टाइम शो रन करता हूँ। मेरे मुकाबले में एक शख्स कहां से भी, आई एम ए क्लासिक एग्जाम्पल। अब इसी स्टोरी टेलिंग को आप लेकर चले जाएं मकबूजा कश्मीर के अंदर, ठीक है, वहां आपको इस तरह की कोई चीज नजर नहीं आएगी। हमारे कश्मीरी यहाँ पे अफवाज पाकिस्तान के अंदर लेफ्टिनेंट जनरल्स में भी काम कर रहे हैं और बेशुमार काम कर रहे हैं, बहुत ज्यादा काम कर रहे हैं। हमारी डिप्लोमेटिक कोर के अंदर भी मसूद खान साहब, ये स्टोरीज हैं, ये वो स्टोरीज हैं जिन्हें हमें शो केस करके बताना है दुनिया को, जी ये फर्क है ऑक्युपाइड कश्मीर का और ये फर्क है आजाद कश्मीर का। दैट्स व्हाई वी कॉल इट आजाद कश्मीर, नॉट पीओके। लेकिन मसला ये बताएगा कौन? स्टोरीज हमारे इर्द गिर्द हैं, बताता कोई नहीं है। स्टोरीज हमारे इर्द गिर्द हैं कि जो अट्रॉसिटीज कश्मीरियों के ऊपर हुई हैं ह्यूमन राइट्स वायलेशंस के हवाले से, हमारे महाजर कैंप भरे पड़े हुए हैं। हमारा मीडिया कभी उसको प्रोजेक्ट नहीं करेगा, बताएगा नहीं। ये कुछ इश्यूज हैं, मेरा ख्याल है कि जिसको हमें देखने की जरूरत है। फिर उसके साथ साथ हमें फर्दर ये भी देखना है कि जो इंडियन नैरेटिव है, डिस इन्फो लैब के अंदर इंडिया इतनी बुरी तरह एक्सपोज हुआ, श्रीवास्तव ग्रुप इतनी बुरी तरह एक्सपोज हुआ, बीबीसी का एक बहुत बड़ी रिसर्च इसके ऊपर, इन्होंने इन्वेस्टिगेटिव रिपोर्टिंग की इसके ऊपर, और उन्होंने बताया कि जी किस तरह से ये पूरा प्रोसेस चलता रहा है, कैसे एक मरे हुए आदमी को उन्होंने जिंदा किया, उसकी आइडेंटिटी चुराई और उससे फिर स्पीचेस दिलवाई, उससे ANI जो इनकी इंडियन की एजेंसी है उसने उसको रीट्वीट किया, फिर वो आगे इंडिया पूरे के अंदर फैला। उसके बावजूद इंडियन जो नैरेटिव का क्लाउड है वेस्टर्न वर्ल्ड के अंदर, अमेरिका के अंदर और बाकी, वो बहुत फैलता जा रहा है। अब हम, और दूसरी जो एक और इम्पॉर्टेंट चीज है हुई है कि सोशल मीडिया के ऊपर हमारा, इफ आई एम नॉट रॉन्ग, 90 मिलियन यूजर है, 9 करोड़ आप कह सकते हैं पाकिस्तान के अंदर, उनका खैर बहुत ज्यादा है। अब हमारे 90 मिलियन यूजर के अंदर आप देखें तो इस वक्त आप यूट्यूब के ऊपर कोई वाकया उसको आप सर्च करें तो उसमें आपको इंडियन नैरेटिव पहले नजर आएगा। हमारा नैरेटिव होता ही नहीं है, इसलिए कि हमने सोशल मीडिया को एज एन इंस्ट्रूमेंट बनाया ही नहीं है। हमने पॉलिटिकली तो बना लिया है कि जी एक्स साहब जो है वो सोशल मीडिया पे राज कर रहे हैं वर्सेस वाई साहब के। हमारा जो इंस्ट्रूमेंट है, हमें इंस्ट्रूमेंट का इस्तेमाल करना आता है, लेकिन किसके खिलाफ करना है हमें ये नहीं आता। ये शायद आता है और हम करना नहीं चाहते, ठीक है। अब यहां तक बातें हो रही हैं कि पाकिस्तान के अंदर अब यहां से आप अंदाजा लगा लें, पाकिस्तान में जो कुछ पिछले दिनों जो प्रोजेक्शंस की जाने की कोशिश की जाती रही, उसको रिलेट किया जाता रहा मकबूजा कश्मीर के साथ। अब मुझे बताएं, इंडिया को जरूरत है आपके अगेंस्ट प्रोपेगेंडा करने की? जब आपकी मशीनरी खुद ही इतनी जबरदस्त काम कर रही है आपकी खुद स्टेट के खिलाफ, कि वो जो मेजर गौरव आ रही है उसको ये कहना पड़ रहा है जी हमें तो जरूरत ही नहीं है इनके खिलाफ बात करने की, क्योंकि ये खुद ही अपने लिए बहुत है। तो हमारा सोशल मीडिया के ऊपर भी हमने जब यूज किया तो अपने ही खिलाफ इस्तेमाल किया, उसका नुकसान ये हुआ कि आज हमारा, उसके बाद जो अगला पॉइंट है, मैं ज्यादा टाइम नहीं लूंगा, हमारा डायस्पोरा बहुत ज्यादा डिस्पर्स्ड है। हमारे पास डायस्पोरा आप देखें तो 10 मिलियन के अराउंड है, कश्मीरी डायस्पोरा भी है उसके अंदर। लेकिन आप कभी जाके उनसे इंटरेक्ट करें, मुझे इत्तेफाक हुआ उनसे इंटरेक्ट करने का, वो पहले इलाकाई तौर पे अपने आप को तकसीम करते हैं, फिर वो सियासी तौर पे अपने आप को तकसीम करते हैं। उनसे कश्मीर की बात करें तो कश्मीर के अंदर भी ग्रुप्स बने हुए हैं वहां पे, कोई फलां ग्रुप है, कोई फलां ग्रुप है, कोई फलां ग्रुप है। आपकी इतनी फॉल्ट लाइंस हैं, जब आपकी इतनी फॉल्ट लाइंस हैं तो फिर आप कैसे अपने कश्मीर के ऊपर एक नैरेटिव बना सकते हैं? जब आपकी इतनी फॉल्ट लाइंस हैं, आपके रिसोर्सेज की कमी है, आपकी बाकी मामलात आपके सामने हैं, तो फिर आप कैसे ये जंग फिफ्थ जनरेशन वॉरफेयर के अंदर जीत सकते हैं? फिर आपने अपनी यूथ को एंगेज नहीं किया इसके अंदर। यूथ को आपने एंगेज किया तो आपने पॉलिटिकली दूसरी पार्टीज के अगेंस्ट इस्तेमाल करने के लिए किया, ना सिर्फ उनके जहन में आपने स्टेट के हवाले से नैरेटिव नहीं फैलाया। तो मेरा ये मानना है, हमारा इशू बिल्कुल जेन्युइन है, हमारी 18 रेजोल्यूशंस ऑन रिकॉर्ड मौजूद हैं। यूनाइटेड नेशंस की सिक्योरिटी काउंसिल मानती है कि जी ये कश्मीर का मसला लॉन्ग आउटस्टैंडिंग है, लेकिन मसला ये है कि हम इम्प्लीमेंटेशन नहीं करवा पा रहे, और उसकी रीजंस ये है कि हमारा हाउस इन ऑर्डर नहीं है। जब तक हम अपना हाउस इन ऑर्डर नहीं करेंगे, लेट मी श्योर यू, nobody is going to help us. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. With this, I end this roundtable with handing over this mic to President Nadeem Riaz, Ambassador Nadeem Riaz, to give his concluding remarks.
We've had a very good presentation from Mr. Yasir. Would anybody like to ask any question?
As ma'am have mentioned that if there is a weak social contract between the society and state, then how can we expect, like it's 21st century, it's not about whose army wins, but whose story wins. So if we are neglecting these, what is going on in the peripheries within the Pakistan, then how can we expect from the society? Because there is so weak social contract between the state and the society. And my question second part is like if we are not economically strong domestically, and our foreign policy is in a regression, then how can we expect from the international level and their international forums? So how can they will listen to us?
I always say social state and society contract. This is very, very important. And what it means is that you have to have a sort of full democracy ki to baat mushkil hi hai, because nobody is a perfect democracy. People leaders and the people institutional leaders, they should always be working for the good of the citizens of the country, irrespective whatever order it is. If you know आपकी भी कार चोरी होती है या आपकी कोई बैग चोरी हो गया, आप उसी के पीछे भागेंगे ना जो ले गया। आप नहीं जाएंगे पुलिस स्टेशन, क्यों नहीं जाएंगे? आपको पता है उसने लिखना नहीं है, आपको पता है वो करप्ट है, आपको पता है आपका टाइम जाया होगा, आपको पता है आपने शहादतें इकट्ठी करनी है, तो इसका क्या मतलब है? द गवर्नेंस इज द की इशू। सिलेक्टिव रूल ऑफ लॉ वेयर इट हैपेंस, कभी भी सोशल सोसाइटी स्टेट एंड सोसाइटी का जो कॉन्ट्रैक्ट है नहीं। मेजर प्रायोरिटी ऑफ द स्टेट इज टू रिस्पेक्ट द कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन, ऑल्सो द पीपल, दैट गिव्स अस द राइट to be a responsible citizen and gives the state a responsibility to deliver. So that is number one. और नंबर टू, आपने कहा कि इकोनॉमी में, मैं हमेशा कहती हूँ अगर टैंक के अंदर पैसे पेट्रोल डालने के पैसे नहीं है तो टैंक क्या खुद चल के जाएगा? अव्वल तो कन्वेंशनल वॉर जैसे कि आपने बताया कि उसका टाइम ही नहीं है, लेकिन कश्मीर के अफेयर में ये मिक्स हो सकती है। ये कहना कि ये खाली नैरेटिव वाली बात नहीं है, क्योंकि बहुत क्लोज नेबर्स हैं। और नंबर टू ये है कि ह्यूमन फैक्टर बहुत ज्यादा है। आप ना भी करें, कश्मीरी इज ऑलवेज क्रॉस टू दैट साइड विद अ वॉक, बहुत इंस्टेंसेस हुए। सो बिकॉज लोगों की अपनी जंजीर तो है ना। सो दिस इज वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट इन माय वे। और हाइब्रिड वॉर के लिए आई डोंट थिंक सो वी आर प्रिपेयर्ड एट येट। हाइब्रिड वॉर फिर भी एक जो है ना, इट हैज बिकम अ मंत्रा, इट इज बिकम अ फैशन। हर बंदा कहता है जी हाइब्रिड हो गया, हाइब्रिड हो गया, पर ये नहीं पता कि हाइब्रिड है क्या। تو اس کی جو ہائبرڈ لٹریسی ہے نا وہ بہت امپورٹنٹ ہے. بہت اچھی بات یاسر صاحب نے کی ہے کہ ہر انٹرٹینمنٹ ہے نا, یوتھ از انٹرٹینمنٹ. مجھے اکثر کہتے ہیں آپ کیا فیس بک میں دیکھتے ہیں نا, کہ میں کہ بھائی ہم تو یہ دیکھتے ہیں کہ کیا چیز نئی آ رہی ہے, کیا ایکٹیویٹی ہے, کدھر جانا ہے, کیا. تو لوگ خالی تصویروں پہ ہی لگے ہوئے پاگلوں کی طرح ٹک ٹاک پہ, کیونکہ ان کو بیچاروں کو سیکھا ہی نہیں, نہ ان کی گھر میں ٹریننگ ہے. سو اٹ از این آؤٹ لیٹ, این اسکیپ. تو کیونکہ اگر جب تک آپ رسپانسبل ڈیجیٹل لٹریسی میں نہیں یوز ہوئیں گے تو یو ول بیکم دا پونس آف دا ادر پیپل. اور یہ کبھی آپ نہ سوچیں کہ جو آپ سے میڈیا کا کام لے رہا ہے, بے شک وہ انڈیجنس بھی ہو, وہ بھی کسی اور کے لیے کام کر رہا ہے. دس از آپ سے ایک چھوٹا سا سوال ہے میرا. آپ نے کہا میڈیا, آپ لوگ خود میڈیا ٹو میڈیا, یو آر اے کشمیری فرام انڈین پاکستان اور اینڈ دا ادر سائڈ, کچھ ایسے آپ لوگوں نے چینلز بنائے ہیں؟
میم ہم نے ایفرٹس بھی بہت کی ہیں. میں ویسے اپنا شو جو رن کر رہا ہوں اس کے اندر بھی ہم نے بہت زیادہ چینجز کیے ہیں. شاید کچھ لوگ اس میں یہاں پہ وٹنس بھی ہوں گے اس چیز کے. لیکن یہ آل آؤٹ وار ہے. یہ کوئی ایک چینل, کوئی ایک شخص اس کو نہیں کر سکتا. اس کے لیے ایک سسٹمیٹک اپروچ چاہیے. جب تک آپ سسٹمیٹک اپروچ, آپ کے پاس کشمیر کونسل ہے, آپ کے پاس کشمیر کمیٹی ہے, آپ کے پاس بیس کیمپ آزاد کشمیر ہے, آپ کے پاس اے پی ایچ سی کا پلیٹ فارم ہے, آپ کے پاس کمیٹیز ہیں, اور یو نیم اٹ, آپ کے پاس اتنا کچھ ہے. لیکن سب سے بڑا پرابلم کیا, آپ کے اندر سینرجی نہیں ہے. کوئی ایسٹ کی طرف جا رہا ہے, کوئی ویسٹ کی طرف جا رہا ہے, کوئی نارتھ کی طرف جا رہا ہے, کوئی ساؤتھ کی طرف جا رہا ہے, اور ڈپلیکیشن آف ورک ہو رہی ہے. کسی کو یہ آئیڈیا نہیں ہو رہا کہ کون کیا کر رہا ہے, کون کیا نہیں کر رہا. اس کے لیے ضرورت ہے ہمیں ایک سینٹرلائزڈ اپروچ کی. ہم اگر میڈیا کے پوائنٹ آف ویو سے بھی بات کریں تو وی نیڈ ٹو ہیو اے سینٹرلائز اپروچ. بھائی نے بات کی کہ ہم اکنامکلی ویک ہیں تو ہماری بات دنیا کیسے سنے گا. میرا سوال یہ ہے کہ پیلسٹائن جو ہے اس کی بات دنیا کیوں سنتی ہے؟ ان کی تو اکانومی نہیں ہے, اس لیے سنتی ہے کہ ان کے اندر سینرجی ہے. ان کے ایک گھر پہ اگر حملہ ہوتا ہے تو دوسرے گھر والوں نے کیمرے لگائے ہوتے ہیں, وہ اس کو ویڈیو ریکارڈ کرتے ہیں, پھر اسے دنیا کو دکھاتے ہیں. وہ ان کی ایک پراپر, اور ٹھیک ہے بہت بڑی سینرجی ان کی نظر نہیں, لیکن ایک سینرجی ہے. ان کا ڈپلومیٹ فوری ایکٹیویٹ ہو جاتا ہے, ان کا جو ڈائسپورا ہے وہ ایکٹیویٹ ہو جاتا ہے, وہ دنیا میں جانا شروع کر دیتا ہے. تو آپ اگر اس اسٹرگل کے ساتھ اپنا موازنہ کریں گے تو آپ کو بہت فرق نظر آئے گا کہ ٹھیک ہے اکانومیز کی آپ کو ضرورت ہوتی ہے, اسٹرانگ اکانومی کی فوج کو بھی ضرورت ہے, اسٹرانگ اکانومی کی اسٹرگلز کو بھی ضرورت ہے. لیکن اسٹرگل کے اندر ایک چیز ہوتی ہے جس کو کہتے ہیں پیشن. پیشن ہم لیک کرتے ہیں انفارچونیٹلی.
What else? Okay, Ji. Thank you very much. It was very interesting listening to all the speakers. But at the very beginning, Humaira had posed about 6 questions. And I will try to, in my own opinion, try to give very short answers to these questions because you have heard a lot on Kashmir. We are thankful to Dr. Shabana. We are thankful to Dr. Mujahid Gillani. We are thankful to you, ma'am, and to Mr. Yasir Rehman for talking about the Kashmir issue from different facets. But to answer some of the questions which Humaira had posed right at the very beginning, the Kashmiri struggle, in my opinion, will continue. It has gone on in the past. It has met with certain successes, but a number of lives of the people have been sacrificed. And it is the Kashmiris who are actually facing the brunt of the problem. The second question was, what is the possible reason for apathy of the international community? There can be many answers for that. It can be India's economic might, an economy of 1.3 trillion, its very close relations with the United States being a strategic partner. But please don't forget that there are people out there, even in the West, who are criticizing India on their human rights record, who are criticizing India on the policies which have been given by the RSS BJP regime. BJP is basically a party which is ideological, and the RSS mindset is ingrained in its basic core. And if any of you have read, I'm talking to the young students over here, the RSS philosophy, the creation of Pakistan is a mistake. And this mistake was to be addressed almost immediately after partition. So you see, when history teaches us certain things, but the most important thing is that you should always read the right history, not the distorted history. The third question was, how is the Indian media projecting the narrative on Kashmir? I would say very effectively. If you look at the way Bollywood is now making movies, most of the people who are the villains, first they used to be those badmashes and they used to be the people from the villages and the gangsters from the cities, but now they are terrorists and they are people from Pakistan. So I think they are really projecting whatever they want to tell the world very effectively. Then there was a question, how do the people of Kashmir feel about the militant struggle? They don't have an option. If your wife, if your daughter are being raped, if you have no internet, if you have no opportunities to grow, what will you do? You all live in a free society. Ask people who have lived in societies which are coercive with no human rights. I served in Africa, in South Africa. Ask the people in Latvia, ask the people in Estonia what they faced under the rule of the mighty Soviet Union. And then you realize what is the value of liberty. What are the challenges faced by them? I think they were aptly told by the honorable speakers, all of them. But it's basically rape, it is state-sponsored terrorism, it is taking away their rights. One thing which I would like to actually point out, which I think was slightly, I wouldn't say missed, but I don't think the exact focus was placed on it, is this wretched domicile law. This domicile law, we don't even know the exact number of domiciles which are issued. The international media puts it at 3 million, some people put it at 4 million, some people put it at 5 million. Just imagine what it is going to do. Not now, not in 2 years' time. Think about 5 or 10 years. The entire social strata and culture of the Kashmiri people, and when I say I refer to IIOJK, that entire structure is going to change. And then even if you have a plebiscite, the answer is obvious. It doesn't take any rocket science to find out what the answer would be. So this is something which the people of Kashmir face. And I really don't think they have any other choice but to sacrifice themselves and to raise their voices. Because if they don't raise their voice themselves, nobody is going to do it for them. And Humaira's last question was the most difficult. What's the way forward for Pakistan? Broadly speaking, one, kinetic measures, which I don't think are possible. Negotiations with India. As far as Modi is in power, I don't think so. That is going to be possible. If we live under a fallacy that the 5th August 2019 move by the Indians is going to be reversed, I think we are living in a fool's paradise. It's there to stay. So what is the way forward for us? Sir, I couldn't agree with you more. Put our own house in order. That's the first thing which we need to do. We really need to reflect as to what we want to do. So you mentioned the Kashmir Committee. I had the honor and the privilege, rather this institute had the honor and privilege of working with the Kashmir Committee. Mr. Gillani is a witness to that. We had given the Kashmir Committee a full 1-year program, which touched upon a number of issues which I'm just going to talk about now. I'll rapidly go over them because there are quite a few of them. The first thing was awareness of the youth in Pakistan, because you have forgotten your history. Your history is now through the internet and through the YouTube, which is not dominated by you. It is a convoluted history. Second was the role of media. Not only the media, but the role of the social media. How many of you get a newspaper in the morning? You don't. My generation waited for the newspaper to come. You just basically go over the news on this device. So you have to educate the youth. I had even gone to the extent of proposing to the Kashmir Committee that the honorable members should go to the universities, brief the students. So it is all in writing. It is available in the parliament. It's a big document which this institute produced for them. What were the other recommendations? Outreach to other nations. Send eminent people who can go and speak on the subject. Don't let it be a joyride. Don't send people who can't even speak 2 words of English. I'm not a person who's propagating that you should speak English. Even if you can speak coherently in Urdu, it can be translated. But don't wash your dirty linen in public. We make a delegation comprising people from different political parties. X, Y, and Z, they give different perspectives. You confuse the parliamentarians on the other side more, rather than to clarify the issue. The world today, and one thing I should have said in the very beginning, look, the rights of self-determination are guaranteed by the United Nations Security Councils. There are resolutions on it, 38, 47, 50, 51, 52, 57, 98. The issue cannot be finished bilaterally. Please don't make this mistake, which people come and tell you. It is not an issue between Pakistan and India. The issue was taken to the UN, not by Pakistan, but by India. Please remember your history. So if you are projecting or propagating the Kashmir issue at this time, it is fine that you talk about self-determination. I served in Europe for over 12 years. I was additional foreign secretary for Europe for 3 years. Human rights sell. You want to get GSP plus? You want to get FATF? Whatever you want to do, human rights is a major issue. Try to sell that. And how can it be sold? We gave this recommendation to the Kashmir Committee. Use your overseas Pakistanis. Not only overseas Pakistanis, but the people from Kashmir. I was projecting the Kashmir issue in front of a particular parliament in a country. Do you know what the parliamentarian said? We are willing to listen to you, Mr. Ambassador, but could we have a person from Kashmir who can tell us about the plight of the Kashmiris? We can't even produce one person. So you see, there is a general lack of our commitment. And my apologies, sir, to the people who sacrifice their lives. That we think that by putting banners and placards and posters on Constitution Avenue, the issue of Kashmir will stay alive. I'm sorry, it won't. It won't. And then to my researcher friends, today is the era of storytelling. We have storytelling sessions here all the time. On Afghanistan, on a number of issues. How many storytelling sessions have we had on Kashmir? Have we? No. Gillani sahab, aap iske witness hai. We haven't. If you can't tell your own story, nobody is going to, in the international world, nobody has the time to look for your story. How many of our researchers publish on Kashmir in international magazines? The general view which I get is that if you write on Kashmir and against India, it is not to be published. Dr. Saiba, you will be able to tell us more about this thing. Exactly. Exactly. But you see, if you want to take this cause forward, it cannot be a disjointed approach. It has to be an approach which has to involve all segments of the state. I think I'm very categoric when I say all segments of the state. And the people, not only the people in Pakistan, our overseas community abroad, and the people from IIOJK. The way forward, what I've told you are recommendations which were worked on, and I don't remember even all of them now because I just basically jotted them down, from my memory. But the ones with the Kashmir committee are much more detailed than this. It's a roadmap. If you have to project something, you have to have timelines. The short term, the medium term, and the long term. And nobody in history has ever offered self-determination on a platter. You have to struggle, and you have to basically at times snatch it. And the last thing which I want to say is that the issue of Kashmir gets confused by people talking about a third option, independence, out of the box, right? Please, the resolutions I have mentioned to you, go and read them. It doesn't exist in them. They have to decide which way they have to go. And the last point I would like to just say is that even Musharraf's 4 points are to a large extent misunderstood. There was a sunset clause in it that let's do these 4 things, and are between 7 to 15 years, let's reflect. And after reflection, if it is a workable thing, let it be, otherwise go back to the plebiscite. So my request to my young colleagues who are here is please read our history. And my request to the honorable speakers is you are people who know much more about the Kashmir issue than I. I have propagated it for the last 36, well, I've propagated it till 2020 for 36 years as a diplomat. But you can propagate it much more, Gillani Saab, because you have ties over there. Dr. Saiba, you have access to students. And sir, you have, madam, access to students. And you have access to the media. But let me again just finish by saying one thing. That the language which we speak to the world must be the language which they understand. It should not be the language which we use in our talk shows of ridiculing X, Y, or Z. And I'm sure if we put our heads together, if we join our hands, social media is in the hands of these young children. The Kashmiris don't have access to social media. So if we join our hands, I'm not going to say it's going to happen tomorrow, it's going to happen in 2 years' time, but the Kashmir issue will move from the back burner to an issue which people will talk about, like the issue of Palestine. And maybe one day there would be a solution. But if we wait and wait, I have told you that with this domicile law, things are going to become progressively difficult with each passing day. Thank you very much for a patient listening. Sorry I took time to explain to the youth what the entire problem is. And thank you very much for coming on a very rainy day.
Sir, one point I want to make.
Please.
एक और जो चीज़ है बहुत इम्पोर्टेंट है जो हम अक्सर भूल जाते हैं, हम इसमें ह्यूमन राइट्स के वायलेशंस के हवाले से जिक्र तो करते हैं मकबूजा कश्मीर के अंदर। आप सब पे ये लाजिम फॉल्ट लाइंस को पढ़ें, इंडियन फॉल्ट लाइंस को देखें। इंडिया के अंदर बहुत फॉल्ट लाइंस और उसके अंदर कई इंडिया निकल सकते हैं और निकल रहे हैं एज अ मैटर ऑफ फैक्ट। खालिस्तान का जो इशू है अगर आप उसी को उठा लें तो आपको अंदाजा होगा कि इंडिया इस वक्त डिप्लोमेटिकली कितने ज्यादा चैलेंजेस का इंडिया को सामना है। इंडिया को कनाडा ने चिट्टा इनकार कर दिया है कि सॉरी वी आर नॉट गोइंग टू एंटरटेन यू, ये जो कर रहे हैं सिख फॉर जस्टिस वाले ये करते रहेंगे। तो इस चीज को भी आप बयान कर सकते हैं कि इंडिया के अंदर जो फॉल्ट लाइंस हैं अगर आप उस पर बात करना शुरू करें, उसको हिट करना शुरू करें तो उनको बहुत तकलीफ होगी। और इंडिया की फॉल्ट लाइंस हैं, एग्जिस्ट करती हैं, अलग बात है वो कैमोफ्लॉज करते हैं इसको कि जी यहाँ पे कुछ नहीं है। आप सिर्फ यही देख लें उनका जो डे होता है जो कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन को ये सेलिब्रेट करते हैं जी, उसके अंदर उन्होंने कश्मीर में सिर्फ जो हिंदू पंडित हैं उनको रिप्रेजेंट किया। पंजाब की बारी आई उस वक्त भी उन्होंने अपनी हिंदुत्व जो इनका अपना एक माइंडसेट है उसको प्रेजेंट किया। तो उससे उनकी जो स्टेट का नैरेटिव सामने नजर आता और उससे जो खास तौर पे जो रिएक्शन आया वो पाकिस्तान उसको बड़े अच्छे तरीके से कैश करवा सकता था। हमारे यहाँ भी ऐसे लोग मौजूद हैं जो इसके ऊपर काम कर सकते हैं, इंडियन फॉल्ट लाइंस के ऊपर, जो बहुत जरूरी है। और एक और जो चीज है वो बड़ी इंपॉर्टेंट है, वो चीज ये है कि अब कुलभूषण यादव को पाकिस्तान की सरजमीन के ऊपर हमने पकड़ा और वो एक्टिव था, ऑपरेशनल था ये काम करते हुए। उसकी स्टोरी इंडिया में एज अ ह्यूमन राइट इशू पूरी दुनिया के अंदर वो सेल की जा रही है, उसको लेके वो आईसीजे तक चले गए। और यासीन मलिक के साथ जो कुछ हो रहा है, जो सन ऑफ सॉइल है, जिसके फैमिली के साथ जो कुछ हो रहा है, अभी वो कितनी बीमारियों से जुट रहे हैं, उनकी स्टोरी कहीं नहीं जा रही। ये इंडिया की कामयाबी नहीं है, इसको मैं कहूंगा ये हमारा फेलियर है। हमें इसके ऊपर काम करने की जरूरत है ताकि इस इश्यू को हम जिंदा रख सकें और ट्रांसफॉर्म कर सकें। एक और जो लास्ट चीज जो मैंने महसूस की है वो ये है कि मेरे पास एक जनरेशन है जिससे मैं कश्मीर के हवाले से बात करता हूँ और मुझे खौफ ये है कि वो जनरेशन अब लेट 50s में है सर, लेट 60s में है, वो जनरेशन जब चली जाती है अल्टीमेटली उसने रिटायर होना है, तो मेरे पास कौन होगा मैं जिससे कश्मीर की बात करूंगा? उनका बैकअप नहीं है, लोग तैयार नहीं हो रहे कश्मीर पे बात करने के लिए। अब फिर क्या करेंगे आप? ये कुछ चुपते सवाल हैं जो कि हमें कोई इंट्रोस्पेक्शन की जरूरत है इस हवाले से। थैंक यू।
Thank you, sir. And thank you, sir, Ambi, President. It was a wonderful and very enlightening discussion we had today. Tea is served and there are some refreshments. Biscuits are also there. So thank you so much once again for coming, and we all stand learned today.